the meeting to order. Call the meeting to order at 5:01. We have a lot of budgets to get through, just to go through and vote kind of time consuming. So we can keep discussions, get something important to say, okay, and we'll work on that, but if not, let's just go through these. But anything you have that pertains to it, or something could be said, feel free to say it. Let's start with the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from January 25th? So moved. First, Dennis, discussion? Discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from January 25th, please raise your right hand, say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, they pass unanimously. We have this fresh warrant article submitted on our desks here. And I'm not quite sure what to do with it.
Yes, so that came in yesterday. It is still within the deadline for petition warrant articles. The deadline isn't until next week for financial warrant articles. So that was received yesterday. The selectmen have not seen it yet. They know about it. I've obviously let them know that we received it yesterday. They will vote on it at tomorrow's meeting. But because we are still within the time frame to include it in Thursday's budget hearing, I'm presenting it to you now, so you're not required to hold a second budget hearing just to address this topic.
And so tonight we would vote on the warrant articles without this.
I included it in, I just printed out a new capital reserve and warrant article worksheet that you have, and I just, within the last 10 minutes, reprinted it to include that 4 million. I did put it under BOS 2024, but I didn't have any other spot to put it, and so I don't know if they will approve it or recommend it or not, but that's where I put it because I didn't really have another spot.
Should it even be in there, considering the BOS hasn't addressed it?
Legally, the BOS either recommend, whether or not the board of selectmen recommend or do not recommend, it still needs to go on to the warrant because it's petition warrant article and it still needs to be addressed by the committee, whether or not the board of selectmen recommend or do not recommend.
Meaning, do they have any plan in place, or they just want to buy the land?
I don't know any more than you do, Jeff.
Okay.
The only difficulty, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but if we were to approve the warrant article that's on it, the selectmen could not approve it or not recommend it. And then it would go in front of everybody with our recommendation.
Whether you recommend it or whether the board recommended it, it goes on the warrant article because it legally has to. If we receive a petition warrant article with 25 resident voters on it, whether the selectmen do not recommend it or the budget committee does not recommend it, it legally has to go on the warrant.
Okay,
So unless your decision as a budget committee is dependent upon whether the select board recommends or denies it, then potentially you could address this and this only maybe before the public hearing on Thursday
that
or.
was my thinking,
But
that
the
we
difference,
don't include it in here.
right, but the difference is, if we don't recommend it, and the board of selectmen don't recommend it, then becomes the 10% rule comes, and it will have to be the first article.
It will have to be the first article no matter what,
Okay.
because it's over $100,000 and it's long-term debt, the proposing long-term debt, it has to have its own bond hearing.
Correct.
And it has to be the first warrant article on the ballot, or that we discussed the evening at the deliberative session.
But if the board of selectmen and the budget committee do not recommend it, the 10% rule becomes relevant then, in which case you can't overexpend the total budget by more than 10%. So you start taking the 4 million and each article works backwards. And you may not get some of your special warrant articles based on that.
Potentially, yes. I think there is a gray area because it's a bond article. We're not raising and appropriating the whole amount in the first year. Essentially, you're just authorizing the selectmen to enter into a long-term note or agreement. I don't know how that $4 million factors in.
Okay, so that would be something that would happen after we're finished. That would come up, that question would come up at the town, before the town meeting.
No.
Well, what I'm trying to do is let's just keep it what happens
Oh.
here, what we're gonna do tonight. Cindy?
I have a problem. How do you evaluate whether or not this is a worthwhile purchase if you don't know what the plans are for its use?
Again, Cindy, I was just, this was
I
just
mean,
delivered to
that's-
town hall with 0 cover sheets, 0 summary, executive summary. It was just dropped off.
They're
I would just say, right, there,
within their right to put it on the warrant.
Sure.
Right.
Signature, so.
I would just say on the face of it, it's way over market price, and we should just disapprove it.
Right.
I would
The
just
10% rule wouldn't come into factor unless they voted yes on it.
That's right.
And then DRA would most likely step in and say, you need to hold another special town meeting and
It gets real
reevaluate.
tricky at that point.
so what to get just procedure is. If, because of the way that the process works is that it goes to the select board. They send it to us. Doing it this way is reversing that process.
Sure,
But I think we can still do it without a second public hearing by not making any decision on it today, removing it out of this. They meet tomorrow night and they decide whether they're going to do it. Before we open the public hearing on Thursday, we vote as to whether we recommend it.
I think that's a fair way to
Yeah,
approach it, yes.
The best,
And again, you also have better ideas and you could look into what its plans are or whether you think it's a worthwhile purchase or idea or not. Right. I'm just trying to do it so that it's
Is there a public hearing that has to happen prior to?
Because it is a bond or a note over $100,000, we are required to have its own bond hearing. The selectmen do that bond hearing, with the time frame in which the statute requires us to do it. Most likely, I put a little memo together for the selectmen for tomorrow night. The bond hearing, in order for us to get it into the newspaper and for it to be within the statutory time frame that it needs to be, we would have the bond hearing on February 26th, which is the last possible day that you can have a bond hearing.
all right, so we're all good with that?
We're gonna table this till Thursday.
We're gonna table it, so we take it out of the totals.
If you do know, Mike, I did put it on your updated summary. I made its own line, so you could still vote on the special warrant articles that have already been presented. And then I made it its own line
Oh, I see.
underneath it that says petition warrant article, so you can still kind of identify what you've already discussed and what is kind of brand new.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we would still deduct the 4 million from the grand total.
Yes, and I have that number,
Okay.
yes. If nothing else changes, but. we'll see what
Right.
happens.
It might take a little time. but I
Say it. I'm not crossing my fingers quite yet, so.
Not comfortable with that now.
Okay, so, if there's nothing else that anybody wants to bring up, we can start to go down through the budgets. Let's just go one through. Meters, all right. As you've all seen me in action, trying to speak every part of the parochial way to make a motion, I'm not gonna do it that way. Don't do it well. So like last year we did is each of you, anybody can make a motion. I'll ask for a motion and you can make the motion. Is there a motion to, or they can make a motion to, recommend the executive budget in the amount of blah, 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 all the way down, right? Okay. Is there a motion for the executive budget?
Second,
Okay. Is, say the dollar amount. You're making a
Okay, so-
motion to,
560,430.
right, so, okay, there's a motion to recommend the executive budget in the amount of $560,430. Cindy, you seconded it? Discussion?
Jimmy's not here, you wanna wait for him to vote for this matter? I don't know where he's stuck.
We should. Yeah, we'll wait.
I don't know where he went.
Is, I don't think he's going along. Yeah. Clark, you still there?
His glasses are here.
Okay.
Not going far out of the line.
Oh, I think he's walking back in.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to recommend the executive budget in the amount of $560,430. Discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
One. Abstain? Zero? Okay, the executive budget amount of $560,000 is recommended. I'll do this. Is there a motion to recommend the town clerk budget in the amount of $45,712?
So moved.
Herb, motion?
Second.
Dennis, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending the town clerk budget in the amount of $45,712, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the town clerk budget in the amount of $45,712 is recommended. Thank you. Is there a motion to recommend the town tax collector budget in the amount of $45,843?
So moved.
Motion, second. Cindy, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending the tax collector the amount of $45,843, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Passes unanimously. The tax collector budget in the amount of $45,843. Is there a motion to recommend the elections budget in the amount of $9,525?
So moved.
Herb? Second? Second. Dennis, second. Discussion? Okay, all in favor of recommending the elections budget in the amount of $9,525, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Zero. Abstained? Zero. Elections budget for $9,525 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the legal budget in the amount of $95,000?
So moved.
Herb moves, Cindy second, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending the legal budget in the amount of $95,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Hearing none, the legal budget in the amount of $95,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the personnel administration budget in the amount of $1,661,214?
So moved.
Herb motion. Second. Dennis second. Discussion? All in favor of recommending the personnel administration budget in the amount of $1,661,214, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
One. Abstained? Zero. The personnel administration budget for $1,661,214 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the planning and zoning budget in the amount of $202,223?
So moved.
Motion, second? Cindy, second. Discussion? All in favor of recommending the planning and zoning for the amount of $202,223? Please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain.
One abstention? Okay, the planning and zoning budget, the amount of $202,223 is recommended. There are motions to recommend a town hall building for $62,950. Motion, second? Second. Dennis, second, discussion? All those in favor of recommending the town hall building budget in the amount of $62,950, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Town hall building budget in the amount of $16,950 is recommended. Cemetery, motion to recommend the cemetery budget $29,230.
So moved.
Second? Somebody second, discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the cemetery budget for $29,230, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Hearing none, cemetery budget for $29,230 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the insurance budget for $210,248?
So moved.
Second? Second. Dennis, second, discussion?
I'm gonna vote in favor of this year, but I really would like next year. Let's look at more normal deductibles than. I know it's late. We're on insurance out.
Okay, we'll just wait and watch, but.
Number 9.
Okay, so there was a motion and a second, and we have some discussion. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the insurance budget, in the amount of $210,248, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
One, abstain? 0. The insurance budget in the amount of $210,248 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the police budget and for $1,858,878? So moved. Motion, second. Dennis, second. Discussion?
I think there's a lot of expenditure that we don't really see. And I had some questions, like, and I'm just gonna throw out, the police chief says he spends $3,500 on ammunition. But there's no, like, we don't have like a checks and balance of exactly, if I looked under ammunition under his budget, he could have like a line item, like I spent 2,700 for 9mm, I spent 500. It's just, we just go by exactly, you know, what people say. And sometimes when you do checks and balances, you find out that's not really the true answer. And,
All right, okay.
you know,
Well, breakdown. so.
yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, and I had mentioned to you before, I know when I look at like my budget in Bondstead, every single penny I spent under fire clothing is spelled out right here, every single penny. So when I looked at my expenditures and somebody from the budget committee asked me what I spend, I said, okay, which line do you want to talk to? It's all.
Does the budget committee get a copy of that? Bonstead?
I'd have to go through the chairman. And the chairman would have to request it to that's proper procedure.
Well, that's where I was headed. So.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. For next year,
That's what I was gonna,
for next year, the committee can ask to have those numbers. And we as a committee, if we vote on a committee that we would like to have that on any given thing, yeah.
I think he's asking for a copy of Al's document, Bonstead.
Right.
yeah, I can provide you a copy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about, well,
I would like, but our, you said it was harder to do on your end, right?
Our accounting software goes, the chart of accounts are based on GAAP principles, which is government accepted accounting practices or principles, but that's what the acronym's for. That gives you the numbers that you look at. So if we're on the PD is 014210. That's what the PD is, 4210. And then it breaks down between contracted services, dues, and it gives you certain categories for you to essentially put a budget number to. That's what you're seeing here. We don't have an individual line item for every single thing that's under contracted services. It would be hard for us to then put in, if you're looking at contracted services, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You would have to create 16 subcategories. I don't know if our accounting software would allow us to do that. That would all correlate back to the 4210-390. I can give you a printout of every single thing that's in 4210-390, but for me to create 16 subcategories and then for us to have to code and place them into those 16 subcategories, and that's just one on one department, would be a huge undertaking. And I don't even know if our accounting software would do that.
And we can get it for the fire department.
So I can
Because
provide
they'll
you that.
request it.
Correct,
So I mean, it's not laid out
correct.
as discrete, but you can get all the expenses.
So I
that
can
go
print
into
out that report, but it's gonna be a bulk report that's everything that's in that 390, or everything that's in the,
For 12 months.
for 12 months, correct?
So. Real quick, there's. A checks and balance in place that says that if he reports an expense for ammunition, that's actually ammunition and it gets categorized in there somewhere.
Sure.
As the,
Yes, so the department heads receive the invoices, well, Becky will stamp them and we'll ask them to code them. And then when they code them, they code which line, which category line they wanted to put in, and we make sure that it correlates, yes.
Okay, so, yes, and where I was kind of going with that is that, if you remember from last week, the budget committee can ask for any information, talk to any person within the town for information to help them create a budget. But what happens is what I would suggest that we would do, if somebody wants a lot of detailed information about something, somebody would make a motion amongst the committee to vote that we want that. So what it is one person wanting information can't require the town to provide that. The
To the
committee
committee.
does. What's that?
To the committee. They can do it on their own. He could do it on his own.
Yeah, you
As
can
a
do it on
direct
your own,
taxpayer.
and then I don't care what you do.
Right.
You just do it on your own under whatever the laws are for an individual citizen. But the committee's not recommending it or requesting it, and you're not requesting it for the committees. You're requesting that.
And I think the question at the prior meeting was to pull out all the stuff related to the vehicles, which is what they did.
Correct.
Yeah, but it's not gonna come out in a discrete category.
It's not gonna come out in its
Right.
own
But you
separate.
can get-
You can still get it.
Yeah.
But so as I was saying at the last meeting, for me to then go through 12 months of expenditures for each category line and to try to break it, it would take, I could do it, but it would take me a very long time and it would be ever changing with every single weekly AP,
Right.
manifest that we send out.
And
So,
if the majority of the budget thought that the information was important enough to have her do that, then we would vote and then they would do it. But if there's only one or two of us that want to have that detail and the rest of the committee doesn't think it's worth the time, then we say, no, you don't do it. We vote that says you don't have to do it. I'm just trying to put it in this, if the committee requests.
I think a sensible way of doing that is if something looks to be not right, those numbers, for example, Al, if you think a number there looks like it's way too high for where it should be, then maybe we ask for that.
Yes, for the detail.
Category, but get it for everything doesn't seem very obvious.
And that's the way our condo association has a similar situation. If you see something that looks not right, then you can ask for the detail.
Right.
But you're not getting that all the time because most people don't want to see all that
No.
detail all the time.
It adds cost to produce that. but-
Yeah, it does. It's cost to reduce it.
Okay. You all right with that, Al?
Yeah.
Okay, because it was, that's not a wrong question.
No,
It's a matter of the procedure that we go through to get it. So right now, there's a motion and a second. To recommend the police budget in the amount of $1,858,878. Further discussion? No, okay. All in favor of recommending the police budget in the amount of $1,858,878, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
1, 2, abstain. 2 opposed. No abstentions. the police budget in the amount of $1,858,870 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the fire budget in the amount of $248,184? Motion, second?
Second. Oh, that's okay, Brent.
Brent.
I have a
Right.
question.
Brent, second, hold on. Brent, second, motion, yes.
Ben, I got a question. You said the average on time was 3 hours for every call?
If you, I'll give you an example. I won't
Okay.
use names.
No, don't use any, please.
I won't. Okay. So employee A had 510 hours. He showed up for 164 calls. You divide 510 by 164, he averaged 3 hours on a call.
Okay.
That's how I got those averages.
Okay, that's how I figured, because I went through a bunch of the averages too.
Right,
It-
yes.
It's just, it's hard for me to phantom 3 hours on a call.
Well, the minimum's 2. So
Right.
whether they're there for 30 minutes or they're there for an hour and a half, they're gonna get paid for 2 hours.
So that's acceptable.
So 2 of those 3 hours are labor law.
Yeah.
Right, so you're really talking about the 1 additional hour.
That's gonna bump your average
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah.
Excuse the average.
Yeah,
If you're there for 5 minutes, it's 2 hours.
right.
Right.
Right, but 3 hours average on every call,
So
so some calls.
Show up, you get 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
5 minutes, you get 2 hours.
I understand that concept. I have the same thing. I'm just saying. I went over my calls and I'm just saying, I think out of 903 calls, we didn't have a single call over 3 hours. Even an accident. We don't put people on the highway for, just that. We do the accident, we go home. And I'm just trying to justify 3 hours for every call.
well, again, it's
Basically.
skewed by the 2-hour minimum.
Right.
So
To get up to 3 hours for 2, you have to have a lot of calls, 4+ hours. Yep, average 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If you had 1 call for 8 hours and 1 call for 5 minutes, you divide it, you're basically.
No, you're still getting 2 hours.
You're getting a total of 12 hours and 2 calls, which averages out to 6. Even though 1 call was 5.
even though 1
Yeah.
call was 2, right,
Right,
5 minutes and 1 call
you
was.
still
2
get, yeah, no matter what. You have to pay them for 2 hours, man.
Well, and I did the math, if you take the wages that we spent last year, so we spent 133,000, or let's freeze math, 133 on wages, we had 259 calls, that's $514 that we're paying per call. That's whether they're there for 30 minutes or for 8 hours or 10 hours. So I think, again, 2-hour minimum is not something that we made up,
That's
Right,
why, yes.
right. So I do, I understand where you're coming from, Al, but I also think we deal with calls where we could be stuck on the Kang,
Yeah,
4 hours. We could deal with the calls where we're stuck in the Notch. I respect that you have experience in this field, but I disagree that we are wasting time or spending excessive times on the call.
I disagree, but
Sure.
I- I'm the expert
You're the expert in Barnstead.
You're one expert on
in
the
fire
committee.
service, in the fire service.
All right,
The expert on the committee is Mike, that's for sure.
we're all experts.
Yeah.
When it comes to budget, we're all. And no, don't disrespect or anything.
Right, no,
No, absolutely not.
Is, okay, so moving right along is, we had a motion and a second for the fire budget in the amount of $248,184. Further discussion? No? Okay, all in favor of recommending the fire budget, in the amount of $248,184, please raise your right hand and say aye.
I,
Opposed?
Aye. 1.
Abstain? 1, yeah. And for the fire budget, the amount of $248,184 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the emergency management budget in the amount of $13,370? So moved. Second, Cindy, discussion. All in favor of recommending the emergency management budget, in the amount of $13,370, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Emergency management budget is recommended in the amount of $13,370. There a motion to recommend the public works budget in the amount of $395,773.
So moved.
Dennis second, Ferg motion. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the public works budget in the amount of $395,773, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One. Abstain? The public works budget in the amount of $395,773 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the street lights budget in the amount of $69,000?
So moved.
Verb motion, second. Dennis, second, discussion?
Is that gonna be enough, do you think? Even,
Yeah, I think so. I did bring the electrical contracts. I knew some people wanted it. I didn't print 15 copies, but I didn't know who really wanted, but I got 6 copies right here. I think it should be enough, because I was saying it was a 7-cent increase and it was actually only a 4-cent increase. That's what they originally proposed us, was the 7 cent, but when we actually signed the contract, it only ended up being 4. So. But I do have it here if anyone wants to get it.
All those in favor of recommending the streetlight budgets in the amount of streetlights budget in the amount of $69,000, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Streetlights budget in the amount of $69,000 is recommended. There a motion to recommend the solid waste budget in the amount of $531,911.
So moved.
Second? Dennis, second. Discussion?
how much was it, Mike?
$531,911.
It's the handout that, is on the table.
Yeah, they might have,
Yeah.
there's an update, yeah.
Okay, on that.
No, it was the one you picked up yesterday,
Okay,
because we ended up at the meeting that you weren't at.
Yeah.
We upped the electricity line.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Okay, we're comfortable on the amount, everybody's, okay, discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending solid waste budget in the amount of $531,911, please raise your right hand and say aye.
aye,
Opposed? Abstain? A solid waste budget in the amount of $531,911 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the sewage disposal budget in the amount of $319,150?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, Cindy? Discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the sewage disposal budget in the amount of $319,150, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Hearing none, sewage disposal is recommended, budget is recommended in the amount of $319,150. Your motion to recommend the water budget in the amount of $488,848.
So moved.
Third motion, Dennis second, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the water budget in the amount of $488,848, please raise your right hand and say aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the water budget in the amount of $488,848 is recommended. Your motion to recommend the community building budget in the amount of $247,524.
So moved.
Motion Herb, second.
Where are we at now? What's this one?
Community building.
Community
Building
building.
18.
Yep.
I need a second. Dennis, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the community building, in the amount of $247,524, please raise your right hand and say aye.
aye,
Opposed?
Aye.
2 nays, abstain. The community building in the amount of, community building budget, in the amount of $247,524 is recommended. The motion to recommend the health appropriations budget, in the amount of $174,404.
So moved.
Third motion, second,
Second.
Cindy second, discussion? All those in favor of recommending the health appropriations budget in the amount of $174,404, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One, abstain? None? Okay, the health appropriations budget in the amount of $174,404 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the welfare budget in the amount of $10,000?
So move.
Motion Herb, Dennis second, discussion?
Do you think that's enough money with? I mean, problems we could foresee here, I mean, it's only $10,000.
I know. I would say that Jane is extremely resourceful when it comes to, general assistance and welfare. Like I said, she is
Yeah.
constantly working with the other entities in town.
Appropriate amount.
Right, so I'm comfortable with it. This is one of the lines, though. If we overspend it, we don't really have a choice, right? And, you know.
You're allowed to over.
Right, we don't have a choice. We have to offer that service.
Right.
I think this year, was a big year for us, and I think if she can stay under that budget number for this year, I'm hoping she'll be able to do it again next year.
Could I just add to that? Jane is immensely resourceful, and when she finds accommodations with different people, she has turned to us, and we've donated furnishing fixture for places like this, so.
Yes.
And the facilities, different apartments, different places have come out quite nice, so.
Yeah, she's been for, as long as she's been here.
Right, like I said, she is extremely resourceful when it comes to this. I mean, she's reaching out to Encore, she's reaching out to the Lincoln, I can't remember, like the Loon has their own fund, I
Oh,
can't
yeah,
remember,
yep.
you know, so she's constantly trying to take the burden off the taxpayers.
Yeah, she's doing fine. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the welfare budget in the amount of $10,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Hearing none, the welfare budget in the amount of $10,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the recreation budget in the amount of $338,375?
So moved.
Second, Cindy? Heard motion? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the recreation budget in the amount of $338,375, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
One. The recreation budget in the amount of $338,375 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the library budget in the amount of $181,917? Herb motion, second. Dennis second. Discussion?
Mike.
I saw Paul's hand first.
Well, go ahead. I just want to know about the 6% for the staff.
Right, you just said the board of selectmen amount, not the trustee amount. I don't know protocol wise which one should go first or second, but there are two different amounts
Well,
essentially
that's
being
what-
proposed.
The amount I said was the board of select.
Board of Selectmen, does the Board of Selectmen one include the 6%, or is that?
No.
the
No.
lowest?
4%.
Okay.
That's why it's different.
If the six,
What do I see it doesn't say doesn't say in here, underneath the operating budget total worksheet. Doesn't say,
Yeah, the trustees recommend
I use the selectmen figure.
wait a minute,
Library.
under the library, so there's a 2024 appropriation for 181
Yeah, because it says, because on top of the column, the heading is 2024 BOS.
BOS, right?
Yeah, so that's the BOS number.
And that number only includes
A 4%.
4%.
You got it.
Wayne?
Yes, Carol Riley came before us and argued that she needed some additional salary money to cover the issues she had with part-time employees. And number we have here, 180,271 was last year, of course. The selectmen have recommended 181,917. trustees of the library are completely in sync, except we approved another $2,400 of budget money for these additional salaries for these part-time people. So the number we're looking at is 181,917. 2,400 in addition to that gets us to 184,317, which is what the trustees have recommended. And Carol presented her case for that the last time she was here.
Say that again, 184?
181,917.
Is what the select, correct,
recommended.
yes.
If you add $2,400 to that, it's 184,317.
The trustees recommended 186,922. According to the sheet that I have for library,
Yeah, I have 186 for the trustees.
That's what I have as well.
186,922 for the trustees, the board of selectmen recommended 160, 181.
Oh, the difference also is, we talked about this when Carol was here last week. Carol received an updated contract for the cleaning that the
Right.
selectmen haven't seen or voted on yet.
Okay,
So that's the difference. So you have the 24 in wages, the 24 and change that
Well,
Wayne's talking about.
I believe though, 181,917 is the adjusted number upward for that cleaning service.
No, the 181,917, if you look, it still says Board of Selectmen recommended 19,500, where the trustees are recommending 22,100.
181,917.
Yeah, for the cleaning increase.
And the cleaning was underneath contracted services, or where was
Yeah.
that? I don't see that.
Right here.
What was the cleaning service?
Yeah, it increased,
Cleaning services and contracted services, 390.
Yeah.
but that increased quite a bit.
It went to 22,000 when she was paying 19,500.
So, right,
Oh,
so
building
that's in the 181.
That is in the, 19 is in the 181,
The,
Not the 22.
not the 22, correct?
Right. I've got, right.
So that's the difference between the two figures. It's the wage, it's the $2,400 in wages, and it's the,
Cleaning.
yeah, the 2,000, 3,000, in cleaning.
So what are we actually approving here, though?
That's up to you all.
Right.
You can choose the selectmen's budget or the trustees' budget or wherever you see fit.
All right, hold on 1 second, Brian had his hand up originally.
Right, we had a discussion about the $2,400 and, I recognize for the committee because of this sort of artificial standard of 4% pay raise across the board, there's probably not support for the $2,400. However, I do agree with Wayne and I do agree with Carol that the money for her operation is important and is necessary. In the minutes that we approved tonight, we as a committee recognize that trustees still have the ability to make that adjustment, whether or not we included it or not. So I just want to sort of point out to the committee that if we don't include it, we're basically making a decision that we don't support a certain nominal increase for part-time workers at the library. And if the trustees choose to do that, they have a perfect right to do that. It would be nice if everybody was sort of on the same page, that they recognize that the small dollar amount of $2,400 to supplement these part-time workers who really service, the seniors and the children at the library versus simply accepting the selectmen's recommendation and then forgetting about it. And then as we go forward next year, we will realize that adjustment took place. So I guess I'm going back to a couple months ago when I heard Wayne's concern about when we go to town meeting and money gets put in the budget and there's a fair amount of money that may be left over, and this concern about did the budget committee really scrutinize and do their job? And Karina correctly pointed out why that occurred. The only point I'm trying to make here tonight is that we should recognize if we don't put the money in there, it's gonna happen anyway. And we're indirectly making a decision that we don't support those part-time employees.
Al?
I agree. I also agree. What about the part-time firefighters? They don't get a benefit, they have no benefit. Why shouldn't they get a 6% rate? I mean, I know full-timers all get 4% rate, but the part-time firefighters, and there's only a few other part-time people. Maybe the part-timers without a benefit package, 6%, something that should be, I think it should be fair across the board.
That's what we
Yeah.
did this year. That's why we showed you the proposed wages for the fire department. And I'll just say this, I don't want to speak for the board of selectmen, but I don't think the board of selectmen are not in support of the employees or the part-time employees getting a wage increase. I think their thought process was, if there are individual employees or individual positions, let's not say employees, if there are individual positions that need a wage adjustment, they should be looked at individually and not collectively. If our part-time workers are severely underpaid, then we should be looking at what is a competitive rate for those part-time workers. And it may be more than a 6% increase. It might have to be a 12% increase. It might have to be a 10% increase. But look at them on an individual basis rather than a collective basis.
Yeah, and I just wanna, I appreciate your point, but I wanna make this point. If we don't vote in favor of the increased pay raise, we are not saying that we're not in favor of a raise for those people. We're saying we're not in favor of them getting 2% more than everybody
Right.
else.
There you go.
Right. I wonder if we should do an increase for the amount that the cleaning service goes up. And but that's not included in this 181.
Right.
It's not included in the 181. It is included in the 186. It's a $2,600 difference. So if you wanted to include the cleaning alone, you would have to add $2,600 to the 180.
Because if the cleaning service is gonna go up, it's gonna go up. I'm
Right.
thinking maybe we should include that total. Because the contract's gonna go up anyway, but not the amount for the 6% wage.
I think you minimally have to put that in.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a choice. That's what the quote is.
That's what the contract.
That's what the contract is.
We do. but- Jim?
Well,
So the budget total I have here says library 184,322. Does that include the cleaning contract? The original one here is 181.
Which one are you looking at?
What's the date on
Let
it?
me just pull this.
what's the date?
This one here is 118,2024. 118,2024. The library. 184,322 BOS.
Add the two. Do
So
something.
if I go back here.
Mine says 119, and that has the 181 and the 181.
181.
Just give me a second here.
2,600 is for the cleaning.
2,600 is for the cleaning, yes. So that was when the library
So
originally.
you're 184,517
184,517
with the cleaning.
with the cleaning.
With the cleaning.
So if I can make a motion. I would make a motion to increase their budget to 184,517 to include the cleaning budget of $2,600.
Okay, motion, second. Discussion,
Discussion.
yes.
That was not what was supposed to happen. The only difference between what the trustees have agreed to and what the selectmen have agreed to is the $2,400 difference between the 4% and the 2%. At some point in the last couple of weeks, the trustees, the library was notified about this increase in the cleaning service. The trustees were supposed to make an adjustment in their number upward to match the library's number for the cleaning service with this new amount. That was already supposed to be done. Now, whether that's, you're saying that's not in these numbers, right?
Cause the board of finance voted on it.
We were given that number, Wayne, last week. The selectmen did not meet last week, so the selectmen did not vote to increase the cleaning contract by $2,600. So that's why that number is also different, because we received that updated number last week. The selectmen haven't met to accept that number. Do I think if I had a magic ball, do I think the selectmen are gonna accept it? Most likely, and I think they would come together and it would be only the wage, that was the only differential, but that has not happened, because we just received,
181. Selectmen
yes.
figure. Is probably going to be increased by the amount of the contract for services.
If I had a magic ball, again, I'm not speaking for the selectmen, but I would say yes, which would bring it to the 184 number 570.
So that 184 number,
It was 184,517, correct?
Yes,
yeah, but what, okay, so 184, 517. Would be if the trustees and the selectmen are in sync with the trustees' budget, because selectmen agree with the trustees' budget, with the exception of the $2,400 for the salary.
Correct.
So where the starting point is floating. And when the trustees approve it, that 181 will go up to a new number, when the selectmen approve it, it will go up to a new number, the 184 number. And the trustees are in agreement with that number plus $2,400. So the real discussion here is the $2,400 between the 4% and the 6% salary increase. Everything else, when these numbers finally get flushed out and corrected, everything else, the trustees of the library agree with the selectmen on every account except the salary account. Correct. So what you do with that, I don't know. It's just, this has been a floating number between the trustees and the selectmen for some time. This has been sort of going back and forth.
But the budget committee has it's our responsibility to vote on this as we see fit. Irrespective of what the trustees have presented, irrespective, but taking into consideration what the trustees have presented and what the board of selectmen through Karina represent. And we take a look at it and say, yeah, we agree with the electricity, or we don't agree with this, or we agree with it. I mean, so we sat here and said that we agree with all of these wages and all of these other departments to be at 4%. I find it hard to not stand up for all the other employees and say that someone else is gonna be 6%.
I agree.
Dennis?
I agree with Paul. I have a hard time with crossing the line. 6%, 12%. Library's worth it, employees are worth it. I'm the first one, especially in my company, to go for employee retention, but when you tell 200 people 4%, you can't do 6%.
Right.
Okay,
So you have a motion and second for the 184?
right, discussion's not over. Not, I would like to throw this, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I think with that adjustment and look at the spending that was at the 95% level for the library last year, if that trend were to hold, I think it leaves the board of trustees in a position where if they so choose to fund that wage differential, they can do it. The only difference is, as I said before, we're as a group choosing not to make a recommendation on that. Trustees have that ability within their statute
Right.
to make that decision.
Yes.
They can do it.
So procedurally, I'd just like to throw this again, because this has never happened before, that we're getting amounts that we're changing that haven't gone through the BOS first.
Right.
And I would like to do it like we're doing with the warrant article, is they're meeting tomorrow night. They can vote on it tomorrow night, and then it comes back to us, and we can vote on the library budget along with the warrant article on Thursday before the public hearing.
Okay.
Right, that the procedure stays that way. I just see it as a slippery slope.
No.
As far as if we're doing things before the selectmen send it to us, then it goes back this way and it comes back this way. So if everybody's all right. Paul?
I mean, if I read this right, if you take a look at what was funded in 2023 and what was expended, there's some $18,000 that was not spent. In 2023.
Mhm.
Seems to me what Brian's saying is correct, that if they're frugal in their budget, then.
Yep.
It's easy to find that 2,400, whatever monies you need to be able to.
Yep.
Do what you need to do.
Well, if you look at today's expenditure report that you should have in front of you.
And you give me so many pieces of
I
paper.
know, I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep you informed. It's, they,
Keep it confused.
they-
Oh, goodness.
right now, that was their balance as of 12/22. As of right now, they have a surplus of 8,153.
Still gives them
Still
plenty.
gives them plenty of money, but it's not quite as large.
Whatever you call it, take
That's
away
right.
my.
Thank you, Rick.
Or whatever.
And maybe what Brian is saying also is that next year, when their wages come in at that level, remember this conversation.
Right.
Because that's gonna show up in their wage. I believe it will. So then if they get 4% on top of their increased expenditure last year, we're gonna be close to the same area, aren't we?
I hate to say it.
Did you have your Wayne hand up?
Wayne had his hand.
I just wanted to summarize what we're saying,
Okay, right.
that in the next day or so, the Board of Select will adjust their budget upwards by the amount of we hope they will adjust their budget upwards by the amount of this new cleaning contract.
Yeah.
Right.
At that
Correct.
point, the new number for the select and the number that the trustees of the library have recommended, the difference is $2,400, and that is the difference between the 4% and the 2%.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing here is that this committee is not, feels that the extra 2% is something that should be just absorbed by the library next year with the underlines, rather than hang it out there as a 6% number,
Right.
and everybody else is getting 4%.
Yeah.
Does that summarize where we are?
Yeah.
Because I got to
Fair.
report back to the library.
I would say
Cause
that's
it's fair.
perfect summarization.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Everything else is getting
Is,
more.
yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Karina. I forget how I want to phrase this. So, in all of the other departments, are there any employees that are getting higher than the 4% raise?
Only the call firefighters, which we showed you the
Right.
proposed rates for 2024.
So, other than that, it's just,
There's one other employee who is a contracted employee who, when he signed into his contract a few years ago, signed in for a 5%, so he gets 5,
is a contract,
correct?
but there's no other,
Nobody,
Other than
everyone
all-
else is getting 4% across the board, including myself.
4% of yours or 4% of.
Well, that's just nature of the beast.
I just follow up on Paul's comment. The trustees of the library are fully aware that there is adjustments possible for the fire department, for certain employees in the fire department. And when the trustees came up with their budget, they were aware that this adjustment was going on, and that perhaps that might be an approach rather than a blanket 6% increase. We might go back and look at individuals and then adjust those individuals similar to what the fire, that was one of the recommendations.
Correct.
that was presented to the trustees, and they considered it. And come back and said 6%. So, and that's.
Okay, I think you have it summarized. I think we're ready to go. Would you like to withdraw?
I will withdraw my
Motion.
motion.
Second.
What can you use?
So we're gonna table this budget.
Yeah. So
We're gonna
what
vote
do you
on it. We're gonna vote on like we are with the
say? Second, I withdraw.
special one or special.
I'll second your withdrawal.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Don't know how that works, but okay.
Good discussion. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Where are we?
Patriotic vote. Yes.
23.
Oh, I saw this. 23. 23, is there a motion to recommend the patriotic purposes budget in the amount of $13,600? So moved. Second? Dennis, second. Discussion?
Do we increase this line so we can have this on the 4th of July instead of the 5th of July? I don't know if everyone knows what's going on, but. If everyone got it, I mean, it's just money, but it's money at the expense of the town, and there's a lot of people here on the 4th. And I don't know what the difference in cost would be.
It would double. at
I
the
was
very
gonna say, I
least.
thought it was huge.
Yeah, it was huge, it was a giant amount.
You said there's.
But 13 for Patriot, 13, that just all, is that all
Atlas can't-
fireworks?
I reached out to Atlas, they cannot do the fourth. There was
I
one-
can't do the fourth no matter what we put. the budget.
So how much is fireworks?
15,000.
So it'd be 30,000. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a quote for their lowest tier show, and that was 26.
But
I'm just asking. I mean, this is a,
And again, it's
you
a,
said we can't do it on the fifth, no matter how much we spend, basically.
on the fourth,
Fourth.
not with a new company,
not with a new company.
not with a new company.
Would there be other companies that would come in?
Like I
I
said.
just, hey, I just asked.
Oh, yeah,
because
no, I think this discussion, because it's a budget that's shared between Woodstock and Lincoln, we've had two now special meetings with the select
Is
boards.
this a total amount or is this just Lincoln share?
The 7,500 is just Lincoln.
7,500, you good? So it would be. If we had to double it, it would be
It'd
15,000.
be 15,000, but the likelihood that we could get a contractor today, we got a contractor 2 months ago to squeeze us in on the fourth, but it was, their lowest tier show was at $26,000. For me to now go back to him and say, I already told you no for the fourth, but now we're reconsidering. There's a likelihood that he'll say, too bad, that was.
Well, right, hey, look. This is a
Yeah.
recreational community that people come up on the floor.
But then also we gotta get Woodstock to agree.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not our decision.
This is
Saying-
this is a 1-year issue, right?
We're hoping.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't. May I speak? I don't see just toss another $7,500 into the fireworks when we're arguing and not arguing, but disagreeing over 2,400 and.
I just had to bring it up.
For 1 year, I wouldn't recommend putting it.
Yeah, I think the likelihood of us getting a new vendor in the next 6 months is probably unlikely for the actual fourth. For 2025 is a different story. I definitely agree. If we cannot confirm the fourth next year with our current vendor, we'll be putting it out to bid July 5th. Essentially, so. But again, I think we should expect to
Start bringing up.
pay at least double.
I'm with you, I'll pick one, have it on the fourth.
Dennis?
That wouldn't go down.
If it's,
Well, just one quick comment. As a hotel operator in town. The fifth is not too bad, cause it's a Friday.
that's just what I was gonna say. It's a long weekend,
Yeah.
and the fifth is right in the, right on that
I have
Friday.
other resorts and other places in New England. Some of those towns are like all over the map.
Yeah,
4th of July, we're gonna have it in October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I just.
I understand.
Like discussion,
I
I bring it up.
also.
I think it's a worthwhile cost, but I agree. I mean, spend more money to have it on the fourth, I think it's worthwhile, but I think because we're in a crunch right now and because the two boards of selectmen have met twice on this and trying to go back and change minds, I think is, a little late.
I'm fine with it.
this is fun.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion on patriotic purpose? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the patriotic purposes budget in the amount of $13,600, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The patriotic purposes is recommended in the amount of $13,600. Long-term debt. Is there a motion to recommend the long-term debt in the amount of $701,663? So moved. Second? Dennis, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending long-term debt in the amount of $701,663, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Long-term debt in the amount of $701,663 is recommended.
Don't forget the tin.
Yeah.
For how much?
$1.
$1.
Is there a is there a motion to recommend the TAN interest in the amount of $1?
So moved.
Second.
You guys are risk takers.
When was the last time we used it?
Not in my time. I've only been here a couple years, but I don't know, to be honest, I'm not.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the TAN budget in the amount of $1, please raise your right hand and say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the TAN budget in the amount of $1 is recommended.
Since we are waiting on the library, are we gonna hold off on operating budget totals and offsetting
Yeah.
revenue totals?
Yes, we have to.
Okay.
So we can go to, reserve. So we're gonna make ourselves do every line item?
We did last year.
You got it, because that's last year.
Yep.
They're all set for Warner.
Yep,
right?
we did it last year, just like we did
don't have
this. Right, you don't have-
They
Okay.
don't have to be.
Well, if we did it last year,
Yeah, we got it.
Just saying what we did.
we're pretty good on time. Okay, under CRS. Is there a motion to recommend the solid waste budget amount of $10,000?
So moved.
Second? Dennis, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the solid waste budget for $10,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the solid waste budget amount of $10,000 is recommended. Fire truck and equipment, is there a motion to recommend fire truck and equipment in the amount of $220,000?
So moved.
Motion, second? Dennis, second, discussion?
Oh, shoot, okay.
What you're eating,
The one time I noticed.
you bidding on a car?
Discussion, okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the fire and truck equipment, line for $220,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, fire truck and equipment is recommended in the amount of $220,000. The motion to recommend, the revaluation line in the amount of $25,000.
So moved.
Motion, second? Second. Dennis, second, discussion?
When was the last time we did we know?
21.
It must be.
21, 5-year, we'll do it again in 26.
The, further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the revaluation line in for $25,000, please raise your right hand, and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Revaluation amount of $25,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the public works, equipment in the amount of $111,194?
So moved.
Motion, second, Dennis, second. Discussion? All those in favor of recommending the public works equipment line in the amount of $111,194, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the public works and equipment, line for the amount of $111,194 is recommended. PD equipment, is there a motion to recommend the PD equipment in the amount of $100,000?
So moved.
Motion, Dennis, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the police department equipment in the amount of $100,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the PD equipment line in the amount of $100,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the sewer system rehab in the amount of $305,000?
So moved.
Motion, second. Dennis, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the sewer system rehab in the amount of $305,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the sewer system rehab in the amount of $305,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the water system rehab in the amount of $276,000?
So moved.
Motion, second? Second. Dennis, second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the water system rehab in the amount of $276,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Hearing none, water system rehab in the amount of $276,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the road and street reconstruction in the amount of $148,000?
So moved.
Motion Herb, second. Second. Dennis, second. Discussion? Hearing none, the road, all those in favor of recommending the road and street reconstruction in the amount of $148,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Abstain? None?
None.
Okay, the road and street reconstruction in the amount of $148,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the engineering and planning line for $40,000?
So moved.
Second, Dennis. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the engineering and planning line in for the amount of $5,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Hearing none, sorry about that. Is
Sketchy.
the engineering and planning line in the amount of $5,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the Kank rec area equipment in the amount of $60,000?
So moved.
Second, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the Kank rec area equipment in the amount of $60,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Is the Kank rec area equipment in the amount of $60,000 is recommended? Is there a motion to recommend the community center in the amount of $5,000?
So moved.
Second, Dennis. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the community center in the amount of $5,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the community center line in the amount of $5,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the cemetery maintenance expense trust in the amount of $5,000?
So moved.
Second, Dennis, second. Is discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the cemetery maintenance expenditure trust in the amount of $5,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The cemetery maintenance expenditure and trust in the amount of $5,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the property and building maintenance in the amount of $331,000?
So moved.
Herb motion, second. Dennis,
Just doesn't.
pardon?
What was the biggest increase for that? What was the reasoning behind that?
Wait, we do that after we get the second.
Oh, go ahead, second.
Second?
Yep.
Second.
Dennis.
Al?
Oh,
He seconded.
We're on property and building.
Property and buildings.
There were multiple lines that we increased in the property and building.
That's what it is.
We increased, I think the biggest one was slated for the Kank
Fire department was,
Fire Department, Kank Rec Center.
Kank Rec Center, this building.
This building,
Okay.
the new PD, essentially it was multitude of town buildings.
Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the property and building maintenance line for $331,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the property and building maintenance line in the amount of $331,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the employee separation line in the amount of $10,000?
So moved.
Heard, motion?
Second.
Second, Dennis, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending the employee separation line, in the amount of $10,000, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, employee separation line, in the amount of $10,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the Village Center Riverfront Park line in the amount of $20,000?
So moved.
Heard motion. Second,
Second.
Dennis. Discussion?
Can we get an update on that? What's going on with that?
Yeah.
We are applying for another Brownsfield cleanup grant. As you all are probably aware, we received a Brownsfield assessment grant, which allowed us to go and do all the soil contamination analysis and reports. We are now applying for a cleanup. One was for the assessment. Now we have to apply for the cleanup grant. Novus, who is the contractor that is doing the actual environmental, analysis for us, and Ray Corber are working together to come up with a, action plan for DES to sign off on as part of our grant application, because without a action plan for the cleanup that's approved by DES, our chances of getting approved for the Brownsfield decreases. So if the state essentially signs off on us saying this course of action is appropriate and we recommend it, we have a stronger chance of getting that Brownsfield grant. So that would happen, the next round of Brownsfield is not to this fall.
This fall.
Yeah.
And if we get the Brownfield grant, we'll allow the riverfront park to be created in its entirety the way it's been proposed now, or
It
will
would
still
only be for the cleanup. It won't be
no,
for the construction of the park.
But the cleanup, will it allow the whole piece of property to be used like it was originally intended?
I would assume so. I mean, I know that,
Go ahead.
well, we've already relocated the skate park. So saying that whatever was proposed originally is gonna be what's put there in 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now, I can't say that. But the cleanup is
I'm
Be-
talking about the use of the
the
property.
use of the property as a whole, correct? Yes,
It would allow the property as
To be
a
used
whole
as a
to be
whole.
used.
yes.
Just one more comment. I've offered this before at this forum. My 25 acres is brownfield site. Obviously, it's been a long time, but if you need any information from my team of engineers, just let me.
Thank you.
How come it went down this year?
Because,
You don't have to know.
I think that was a discussion we had at the CIP level.
We did. Because we weren't sure.
We weren't sure what the course of action was moving forward, I
Right.
think.
We
And
weren't sure
right
how much
now-
was gonna be needed, where was gonna be used, we were talking about doing the skateboard park in a different area.
Right.
So it got cut.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we originally were,
Just kind of.
We
Right,
did,
Yeah,
that's-
we
that's
did.
wrong, yeah.
and I think we originally were, building funds to build out the project, and now that we know that the remediation alone is going to be millions of dollars, that's where the first focus became, rather than the actual build out at this point.
Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the Village Center Riverfront Park line in the amount of $20,000, please raise your right hand and say aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the Village Center Riverfront Park line, the amount of $20,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend library technology in the amount of $2,000?
So moved.
Third motion. Second, Dennis. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor of recommending the library technology line, the amount of $2,000, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The library technology line amount of $2,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the library building, the amount of $28,000?
So moved.
Motion Herb,
Second.
second Dennis. Discussion?
Not the,
You growled, so we're waiting.
an issue with how they're gonna do that front walkway, but it's just.
I don't believe this line item
That's not-
is
that's a
dedicated
line
to the
item.
walkway. That line item is dedicated to, I think, future expansion.
It was, yeah.
Expansion might come out over the walkway. Yes, Mike.
Absolutely, this is for the capital.
Right.
Right,
I think so.
and that, walkway, where the front steps has been removed from that, and is now in a one, so it's not, it's
Oh, that's right,
just an
right.
annual addition to the capital.
Yeah.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the library building in the amount of $28,000, please raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? The library building in the amount of $28,000 is recommended. Fire truck and equipment, is there a motion to recommend fire truck and equipment for $0? So moved. Second? Nobody wants to up it?
Well, somebody, That was for the fire truck we bought last year. That's why-
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's really discontinued. I don't,
yeah. I don't
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah, I
on
don't
there.
even know why it's on there. There.
just to show that.
It has to be on there because we have to show what we
But
funded.
the amount.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
And you could change it,
Okay, well,
I believe,
we
correct?
have a line.
If somebody
That
wanted to
would
make it,
be redundant. It's line
Is everybody gonna change?
that's why it's there.
What's the difference between the bond and one?
Between the second one and the last one.
They're the same capital reserve, but we funded it two different ways last year, so we broke it up for, clarification.
Okay, there was a motion and a second, correct?
Yeah,
All right, we had a little discussion, that's over with,
Yep.
all right?
Yep.
All in favor of recommending the fire truck and equipment line in the amount of $0, please raise your right hand and say aye. Congratulations, thank you. And opposed? Abstained? Nothing, fire truck and equipment line in the amount of $0 is recommended. So then,
subtotal of trust funds.
yes. Is there a motion to recommend the subtotal of the trust funds in the amount of $1,661,194?
So moved.
Motion Herb, second. Second. Dennis, second. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the subtotal of the CRF and trust funds in the amount of $1,661,194, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Hearing none, the subtotal for the trust funds in the amount of $1,661,194 is recommended. Okay, then we have the other warrant articles. Is there a motion to recommend the PD vehicles and new cruiser in the amount of $62,000? So moved. Herb motion, second. And a second, discussion?
I have a question. Does that include the lights, radio installation, everything?
Everything, outfitted.
That's a deal. Good deal.
We don't switch the lights and equipment from cruiser to cruiser?
We try to,
Okay,
but it's usually us getting rid of our oldest cruiser to get the new cruiser and they're not always compatible.
Further discussion?
How many cruises do we have now? You know, I think we asked, never mind if you don't know.
I think it's 7, but don't hold me to that, yeah. I'm pretty sure it's 7.
Okay, without further discussion, is there, all in favor of recommending the PD vehicles in the amount of $62,000, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, the PD vehicles, the new cruiser in the amount of $62,000 is recommended. Is there a motion to recommend the highway block grant in the amount of $30,000?
So moved.
Second, Dennis, second, Herb motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the highway block grant in the amount of $30,000, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The highway block grant in the amount of $30,000 is recommended. The library front steps. Is there a motion to recommend the library front steps in the amount of $62,000? So moved. Herb motion? Second,
Second,
Cindy second?
just so we can discuss it. Waiting for Paul.
Okay, discussion, Dennis?
How do we motion? Second. Oh, it's gonna fail. We don't want, I'm sorry.
It's called climbing on the limb.
Or, I mean,
Right.
but I wait.
We have to initiate the discussion.
Exactly.
Right, right.
Okay, there was a motion and a second, and we started discussion, further discussion. Wayne, your hand was up first?
Just comment that, when Carol was here, we talked to her about the $62,000. And she was directed by this committee, I believe, to go try to get other estimates.
Right.
That 62,000 represents just one estimate. It's negotiated down from 70,000. But it represents just one estimate. So that's the number we have right now, unless, she has to come back to you with some other alternatives. It's just where we are. There's no question but what those steps need to be replaced. It's a question of doing it for the least possible cost. I think that's what. Okay.
Brandon, did you have any discussions with the contractor with the police? I asked you to look into that, see whether.
Did, to be honest, I did not.
You did not, yeah, failed.
More ways than one. I'm sure. But I did not, but I will,
I do believe that
think
62,000 is a real high price for that. And I think that if we approve the 62,000, I don't think it ought to be based on just one contractor price. And I don't know how we do that without, I mean, once you approve 62,000, you know, if one person says no, it's gonna go back to the one contractor that gave you that price anyway, and I gotta tell you, there are other contractors out there, and they will do it. I mean, Dennis could probably help with some of that, and I think, I just have a hard time of putting a $62,000 price tag out there with, project out there with one price on it. I just,
I don't disagree, Paul, but I also would hate to see zero money be raised and appropriated, so then we can't do it at all this year. So I think if I could make a suggestion, is to come to a figure that you're comfortable spending on those stairs and approve that figure, because if we totally deny it, those stairs aren't getting fixed this year.
Well, we will recommend it. The town meeting will approve the discipline.
Sure.
right, right,
Or, as she mentioned, you can come back with it.
I mean,
I think it's stronger at town meeting to have the budget committee's recommendation.
I do too, and it's not like I don't wanna see it fixed, I just.
Yeah.
It just,
I'll do it myself for 61. No, I think 20,000. I don't know.
conflict of interest comes to mind.
Whatever's anybody think, I think
That's what I mean. It's hard to.
that's 20 grand should be
I,
plenty.
I was gonna say 30, to be honest with you, but I mean,
I think that's a little high still.
if you use that,
Make a motion.
if you can find that, I think they're gonna give you a really good deal. And they've got the expertise to do it. And they're working for the town. I mean, that they're there all summer, so it's. I'll make a motion that we change that to $30,000.
I'll second 30 sounds still a little high.
Motion on the table to adjust the, library front steps from $62,000 to $30,000.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Oh, that's right.
I
That's
can
right.
withdraw my motion of 62.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, that's sorry, I forgot.
I probably should have said amended it to, yeah.
But can't this all still be part of Herb's discussion? Because I have some questions within that before we just willy-nilly change it to 30,000.
Well, there was a motion and a second.
I should have made,
Yeah, but then we can.
I should have said what I would like to do.
Yeah, okay, yeah, hold on a second.
I probably should have said like that, what I would like to do is to amend that amount down to, so my amendment would have carried, so we would have to vote on the amendment.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
But
And so we have, if you withdraw your motion,
I'll withdraw.
withdraw your second, withdraw your second. Now, if you'd like to make your motion.
Yeah, I would like to amend the amount down from 62,000 down to 30,000.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Okay, discussion.
Okay, I had a question. Is it possible, this is really putting the pressure on you, to talk to those people tomorrow? You know,
I won't have a price tag.
you won't have, you know, because I'm saying, just pull an amount out of the air. But we really don't have, we only have one bid, and we know this, if someone gets hurt on those stairs, that's a bigger liability than us sitting here. tootling.
Here first.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel we need a little more input to make a legitimate change to this number. That's just my opinion. Cause I worry about the liability, you know.
Al?
That's it.
Was there a spec sheet on the stairs like somebody had mentioned concrete, somebody had mentioned granite.
I can explain all that.
Okay. You spoke already, Paul, so Wayne goes first.
Well, Wayne spoke too.
Not yet. Al?
I didn't hear
Original
him, so I
estimate
don't-
was $70,000. That includes dismantling basically the whole front of the library, pillars, the roof, the woodwork, all has to be taken out. The amount was adjusted down from 70 to the 62 based on the decision to go with concrete steps, to go with granite steps instead of concrete. Now, the direction to the library the other night was to, try to come up with a lower offer. By coming up with $30,000, you're just pulling a number out of the air without understanding the technology, the technical aspect of the work that has to be done there. I'm not saying the 62 is a good number, but I'm saying just pulling $30,000 out of the air is meaningless.
I hear you.
Agree.
I have an answer.
That's not, yeah, so do I. That's not true. It's not meaningless. Many of us have contracted for similar projects. I've got an idea what it costs. I'm not pulling a number out of the air. I know prices, we've had high inflationary period, but I've managed similar projects. And they don't cost 62,000, so I'm just astounded by it. Anyway.
Yeah, so the reason I probably should go further with that $30,000 number was this is underneath the warrant articles. But it doesn't mean that you can't take money from the capital improvements for either the library or the property and building maintenance and use some of that, or take it from some of the other budgets within the town, like we're currently doing for the police station, when we took $100,000, if you find out that the project runs so important. So it's never just that money. You can always supplement. If it ended up being 45, sure, $15,000 somewhere could be found between CIP and operating budgets to be able to do it. So $30,000 number, I think, gives Karina some flexibility to check that out. And, maybe talk to Ben. I think Dennis's contractors probably would be very helpful as well, but I mean, I think there's a multitude of options here that I think you could use, to try and reduce that.
Well, and it needs to be done this year, correct?
I would say, yes,
That was the reason we didn't put it.
that's why the reason we didn't put it in the CIP, exactly.
Is the police department, police building being started this year?
Yes, they're down.
They're pouring concrete now.
Pouring concrete now.
Flower.
Then I truly believe that Paul's comment, that they can come here too. I had a small project to do here in the building over here. And I pulled DHI to come over here to do it. And we got to hold something between buildings. We didn't do it, and now they can't find somebody to do it for that price. And obviously, if it's the police department there or DHI over here, which is my contract over here, DHI just did a good sized project at the school building. I think between the mix of what everybody's saying, from the police building and money, 10,000 taken from here or there, I think it can get done. It looks sharp.
Just to bring us back to the history of this thing, the library presented to the CIP project and described the project. It was decided not to fund it out of the CIP because there were no line items that said anything about front steps, or there was no money in the CIP, and it would clean out almost all the money in the CIP that the library has accrued for other maintenance services. And at Karina's recommendation, it was decided to do a one-time warrant specifically for this project as a separate project, because it was not covered in the CIP. So.
If I can elaborate on that, I think it was less of there not being a line and more of it needing to get done this year. The CIP program is to raise funds over a period of time, a 6-year period of time for a project. It's not to put the money into the CIP and withdraw it the next day. And that, if we went to town meeting and this $62,000 was in the capital reserves, in the part of the capital reserve fund, that money would not go into the bank for the library to use until the end of this year. So there would be no contractor, there would be no work done this year. So I think it was the time crunch that we were in that drove us to the warrant articles, just to see it.
And at the end of this year's CIP, they'll have $45,000 in the library, just the library capital reserve.
Just make one more point. If you take this warrant article to the voters asking $62,000 steps at the library, it's gonna get voted down. So, I mean, it's practical.
If that wasn't the consistent opinion of everybody that's been involved in this on a close basis. In fact, I've discussed this with Karina, and it was felt that $62,000 as a warrant would definitely probably pass at the town meeting, but it's not an issue. So here we've got conflicting ideas and throwing out numbers. So
But I don't think anyone's saying here that we're not in support of doing it. We just want to get a better price and try and find some more information from some other contractors. And if you look through with the other contractors and they come in at $60,000 or $70,000, then we'll do it for the 62. But if it, you know, if it ends up coming in at 30, then we'll be fine. So it's not like we don't, it's not gonna get done. I don't think that. I think you're missing the point that, you know, we want to do it and we think it needs to get done. It's just, and we'll find the money to do it. Just want to appropriate $30,000 to do it instead of, or, yeah. I agree with Brent. I'd stand up at town meeting and say, hey, look, I've done a lot of work like this. $62,000 is way out of line.
Right?
Is it possible between now and town meeting to have better information of what a possible cost might be? Because certainly if we put a placeholder in for the project, the budget committee is recommending the project. Now at town meeting, it could be amended if we have fresh data that says it's going to be whatever the number is.
It would, so we can't just have a placeholder. We have to put it into the budget. It's gotta go into onto the warrant that way. Yes, they could, someone could stand up at town meeting and amend the warrant article, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it would need to be, we would need to have a number that you would have to risk being voted on at that
Right,
rate,
we-
at that time.
So we could put the 30,000 in now.
Yep.
Recommend the 30,000.
Yep.
And if, don't forget me this time, you ask that question. Within 30 days, maybe they could give us an idea of what you thought
An
that
idea,
might be.
yeah, sure.
And if they said, look, it's gonna be 30,000 or 40,000, we could then at town meeting amend it
Yes.
for you.
Absolutely, that could
It
happen.
was amended.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would stand up.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to go through the formalities
Yeah.
of the written amendment, but that absolutely could happen.
It'd be done.
Okay.
So this way, at least there's an intent and a recommendation from the committee that the steps should be addressed.
Right.
Yes,
Agreed.
We could do that.
okay.
And
Further
and that's
discussion?
even, we have to submit our paperwork to the state too before town meeting, right?
We have to, yeah, so technically,
so-
the budget committee's budget is due to the Board of Selectmen by by February.
Right.
15th.
And then we have to, but there's the MH, whatever the form is.
Yeah, we have
Yeah, but we also have to
MS4.
submit that to the state. So, I mean, but we can still amend it even though we,
Everything can be amended on the floor. Yeah,
okay,
we can't, but you can't,
Good.
once the paperwork's submitted to the state, you can't hold another budget hearing and amend it then,
Right,
but you can
right.
amend it on the
but
floor.
we could amend it
As long
on,
as it's not.
Yeah.
okay, just checking,
Yes.
because I know.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, all in favor of recommending, the amended library fund steps amount of $30,000, please raise your right hand and say aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the library front steps line in the amended amount of $30,000 is recommended. Very good, thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Mike, just one more question. We're certainly beating the full library to death here tonight. Taking an awful lot of time for the library's issue. The library though should continue to try to get another price.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not just gonna stop.
We're just recommending.
Oh, it's hopefully.
No, if anything, Wayne, I think this would give Carol more incentive to find another quote.
Right.
Because she knows that price tag could essentially,
Don't have to know that it's budget as.
and I will reach out to
People
them.
get $30,000. but
We recommend,
needs-
anything
she
can
needs
happen
to
in
get
town,
more.
I'm sorry.
Is there a, do you have time to do that, or do you? You want, should they be going to the trustees to go say, look, this is what we want to do, or do you want some volunteer help? I know you're busy this time of year, that's why I'm saying you got 30 days. You know?
Or do something, no,
No, you're busy and you forget things. So
Yeah,
I'm saying, so, you know, maybe someone else could help you out, Dennis, me,
yes,
Brent.
if I could have,
Yeah, you want me to look for a bid?
like I said, if you give me contact information, I can make phone calls. I can send an email to BPS and say, hey, we've got another project. Can you give me a rough
And they're gonna,
estimate?
what they're gonna say. is,
I might not have designs and I might not have a
"Walk
solid
over
quote,
with
but I-
someone and say, what can you do? But I think there's people with building experience that could do that, between Dennis, Brent, and myself, that could walk over there and say, this is basically what you wanna do.
Well, maybe the library should.
The
Oh,
li-
that's
I-
what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying.
And they actually have the paperwork from before. I mean, you can show what, you know,
Yeah.
this one contract that said
Yeah.
it had to be done, but they would need to visually see it themselves.
Well, they're
Well,
here.
and I don't mind making the
Yeah.
connection, but thank you, Paul. I also can't be spearheading the library.
No,
concept
I
from
understand.
that. So I don't mind making the connection. I don't mind connecting the library trustees or Kara Riley with some contractors, and then they can meet at their own time and go through the motion.
If they want help, they.
But yeah, I can't spearhead right now the library's front step project. I think that's fair.
As an individual citizen, you guys can all do that. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm just not quite sure, Brent.
That's what you're doing it as. If the library wants you to help them, then they'll do that.
Not.
Did I do something wrong?
No, you're fine.
Yeah, you feel guilty?
Well, I'm feeling like,
Let's go.
doing great.
Almost there. Oh,
And the longest one. Okay, is there a motion to recommend the new capital reserve town buildings audio video surveillance in the amount of $2,500?
so moved.
Second, Dennis, third motion. Discussion? Okay, all in favor of recommending new capital reserve town buildings audio video surveillance amount of $2,500, please raise your right hand and say aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the amount of $2,500 for new capital reserve town buildings audio video surveillance is recommended.
And I'm assuming we're putting a hold on all the other totals? We have 3 other total ones. to do.
Yes,
Yanked up. Yeah, we have to. Go.
well,
We have other special warrant articles, totals. We have final total of the CRS trust funds and warrant articles, and then we have the grand total. We have all 3.
But you really can't do that. until that
That's what I'm
whole
asking.
budget is
That's what I
decided.
meant, and the library and
Right.
the,
You're right.
Well, the library we voted.
yeah,
Yeah.
the CRF.
no, the first library, the.
Oh, the first
the
library.
First
right,
on the,
right,
on
right.
the
Yeah.
other one.
Yeah, we can't vote on the operating totals yet because we still have 2 outstanding items. I
Right.
just voted on capital reserves, that's good. Special warrant articles, technically you can't vote on that either because that would include the one you're gonna discuss. on
Right,
Thursday.
and you can't do a grand total.
Correct.
Nope, and we're not gonna discuss this land purchase one tonight, am I correct?
Pardon?
Are we not discussing the warrant article for the land purchase tonight? Okay, that was the next one.
I think you could just, if you choose to,
Well, we-
but
we can
you
do-
can discuss it, but not vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you were gonna wait till the selectmen.
Oh,
Well, here's the.
But as far as we voting, we're waiting for them to vote, but it doesn't mean we can't talk about it here or try and understand it.
Pretty short discussion, one.
Well, you know, yeah, okay. All right, so discussion's over?
$1 million without a plan doesn't really need a lot of discussion.
I thought the decision we all made earlier is we just didn't have any information. All we've got is this number that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, we can't.
But
That's
what
exactly
that
what I
number
said.
based on.
What it is, who's behind it, why they're doing this, or what we're doing.
but I don't know if you'll have that on
No.
Thursday, right?
Just give it the town, yes.
Well, what we agreed to earlier, but procedurally, we're waiting to see what the Board of Selectmen.
And I think that's right.
Yes,
If I may, it's my understanding this warrant, this petition is to purchase the land for affordable housing.
that's what I had heard too.
Just the land.
Just the land, but
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
no plan to build it out or anything.
Right, no, well, it doesn't say that. The petition doesn't say that, so you're making an assumption.
No, what I've been told, and again, I guess everything's here today, I'm obviously one of the petitioners, is that it's currently being marketed at $399.
So I don't know.
And that's where that $450 million came from. So that would be just a purchase. If you look at math.
And then you're looking at infrastructure, then you're looking at, I mean,
How many offers have they had to have?
yeah, we can't even get.
Again,
the ball
I don't
done.
know more than-
I'm seeing a lot of acreage in that particular area. That's unimproved, that isn't going for that kind of money. So. It's kind of like it's over here by Willard, we're not talking about it. Talking about some unimproved property on.
But it can be.
Can be, but that's
It
not
can
the
be
price.
improved, and that's the.
$4 million is not the price, 300 acres of it.
And you gotta put a bridge across the road.
Bridge, yeah.
There you go.
So the only operating budget total we haven't done is the library.
Correct.
Right, right. Motion to adjourn. Second, discussion? No discussion, so.
Thanks, everybody.
Six,
5:30.
6:47.
I won't be here Thursday. Okay, I have a budget meeting,
Another budget meeting.
Another budget.
my budget.
And anyone who wants to.
Okay.
If anyone.
I wrote down the number that we still have to, there's 4, 5, 6 different things. Basically, it's 2 items.
I know you want, I think you were gonna want one.
If I can't.
And I will not have it.
That's the minute.
Well,
We finally got through it about like really a couple years ago. Well, my first.
All I do is say move on. I got my, I've got that down pat. You know, why, Mike, I was.
Make the motion.
What you do?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, well, have a good night. We'll see you in 2 days.
Thank you.
Oh, that's right. You won't see me.
Yeah.
That's how. my
You
budget.
know. Yeah, I know too. I just wanna look to see how.
That's my. Okay, so that's what you print out page.
Oh, this is your summary. Yeah.
And then under payroll, every minute, that's pretty.
Yeah, that's.
And then under,
I think you. That contractor over there working for the town, you have some. Story. One page of stuff.
you get a maintenance on. We use block 5.
They're over there on that.
And we have, we said, Thursday night, when we put the budget committee, they asked me how you can spend that. We thought, no, so you can- everything's right. That was holding them.
It's the, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, if you look at ours, this is how it's broken down, and these are the categories. and this is the
Right.
categories. So then you're breaking it down to
One-
categories.
I have to do that every week. Every week.
Yeah, I
You know what I
agree.
mean? I want to.
Have all this-
We do us justify. a
I get all my bills.
No, you're
I
absolutely.
say, it's some, years ago, from KJ truck. I have to, KJ truck and truckers here, one, 1,500. I put it on the spreadsheet. I give it.
Have a good night, Mike. Okay, thank you very much. Good job.
Yeah, good night,
everybody.
Plugs it all in, and every month, we get this, we print out, every month, we know what percentage of this thing is.
I'll have to.
I know what percentage I have left in my budget. exactly.
Actually.
Right.
Well, where would I move to?
Yeah.
For me, to be a subcategory for just the executive contracted services, I would need I would need 180. I would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I first bought my house, I was trying to get a home equity on the credit. Yeah. And then last year, my evaluation. I mean, and the value of my home went up just $70,000.
Right, there come
That's how I was able to get it.
One of these lines.
Communication.
Yeah, but-
By big water here, put it in communication.
Yeah.
That.
So we think lake trees and fire.
2009.
The nine.
Hey, but now, Same one, that contract, you stop it, it's all done.
Yeah, but our contracted services, and then we're several years, but I need twice what I need for all category lines under contract.
I know, it's weird.
But you paid it, you paid by the year.
Well, sorry, it depends on
Right.
the contracted service, so like
Yeah.
printing the town report, we only pay once,
Right.
the audit, we only pay once. But certified computers, we're gonna pay that on a monthly basis.
Right.
Our tele, we're gonna pay that on a monthly basis, the copier lease, we're gonna pay that on a monthly
Almost looks like
basis.
the table.
Yes, thank you.
Let's start developing.